Well, the PCC video did really well. May as well milk this topic as long as I can. Greetings, Kings. Bones Maloney of the Bones Maloney YouTube channel. You've probably clicked on this video because you have determined that you might want to get into a pistol caliber carbine. Rather that be your first long gun and a way for you to step into the preparedness mindset and get something that is non-intimidating and affordable, or you're buying it as a supplemental rifle for your collection. There's many different ways you can add a PCC to your portfolio of firearms. And in today's video, we are going to break down most of the common options you'll find on the market and talk about what is the most practical PCC that you can add to your gun safe that will enhance your capabilities as a prepared citizen or a Minuteman the most and be the most cost effective. Let's get into it. So we're all on the same page here. We're going to assume you're a non-reptoid lizard person and that you are a normal human who owns a Glock pistol or a Glock adjacent pistol that takes Glockazines, and that you either own or are going to eventually get an AR chambered in 5.56 as your main rifle. And in today's video, we are going to break down most of the common options you'll find on the market and talk about what is the most practical PCC that you can add to your gun safe that will enhance your capabilities as a prepared citizen or a Minuteman the most and be the most cost effective. Let's get into it. Now we'll talk some of the common industry offerings that are readily available and on the market that somebody might consider when they're going to pick up a PCC. The first one we'll talk about, and the one that I think a lot of people gravitate to, are the folding PCCs, the 9mm rifles that hinge in some way to break down and be more compact and packable. These rifles have been popular for a long time. They're affordable, they are light, they are easy to haul around in something like a backpack or a vehicle. However, they have little training value between your main rifle and these platforms. They also have a 16-inch barrel, which is more barrel than is needed for a 9mm cartridge. Polymer is significantly lighter than aluminum or steel, but it is significantly weaker, and it's very susceptible to temperature changes and degradation over time. These firearms do not pass what I call the Grug test. If for whatever reason I had to use the firearm as a blunt implement and hit someone with it, am I worried about the firearm or accessories on the firearm breaking? If the answer is yes, then I do not consider the firearm for any sort of serious use. I understand how dynamic and kinetic a two-way firefight can be. You are often going to be ducking behind cover, slamming into objects, and potentially going hands-on with people. The last thing I want is to worry about my firearm breaking in the event that those scenarios become real. For that reason, for most people, I don't recommend any sort of folding or hinging design for a rifle, nor do I recommend a lower receiver for a long gun be made of polymer. Next, we'll talk PDWs. PDWs are essentially a pistol that has been given a few extra features and been built from the ground up to be as small but as controllable as possible. They're light, they're easy to stow, and they're really great for VIP protections and vehicle work. Outside of that, though, they really leave a lot to be desired. They're very expensive. They take proprietary mags, usually. They're usually hard to find parts for in the event that things break. It's relatively difficult to mount accessories on them. You're relatively limited and have to be creative or spend extra money in order to do so. Often these will come from the factory as an SBR, meaning you have to file a tax stamp with the government in order to buy one of these. Moving on to some systems that I think would be a bit more practical, we're going to talk SMG-based PCCs. These are going to be carbines that are adapted from military SMGs or something similar to semi-automatic for the civilian market. Think the MP5 and all of its derivatives, the MPX, B&T series of PCCs. They all came from military or law enforcement contracts and backgrounds and have been adapted and adjusted for the civilian market. These pseudo SMGs have a lot going for them. They are built off of a proven system. They are designed around 9mm, so their recoil system is generally more refined. They usually have a really good track record, and coming from a lot of the time military contracts, they're very robust and durable. However, the downsides to an SMG-based PCC is the fact they are relatively expensive. The magazines and the parts can be hard to find. You're no longer sharing magazines with your pistol. And again, there's limited training between your AR, your main rifle, and an SMG like this. Some may translate, like the MPX having similar controls, but again, a lot of them have different controls, have different weight distributions, and overall ergonomics. On the opposite end of the spectrum, we have the traditional rifle style PCCs, or ranch rifles, as some people call them. These look and are designed like old school hunting rifles. They're very non-intimidating, which can be great for getting new shooters involved into the sport and the mindset. Also, in the event that you are concerned about how you may be viewed for carrying a long gun, this can definitely ease a lot of tensions and it looks way less intimidating and intrusive and overt compared to some of the other items on the list. They're generally pretty soft shooting and usually share magazines with your pistol. The M1 carbine put many dicks in the dirt during World War II, but you cannot deny that these types of platforms are very obsolete at this point. They're very heavy, they're very long, and they forego a lot of modern features for the more retro or simple aesthetic. It's very difficult to mount accessories and modern features like red dots, lights, slings, and other force multipliers and accessories onto a weapon system like this. Lastly, that brings us to the AR-9. And big surprise, this is what I'm going to recommend for most people if they're looking for a general purpose PCC. They have shared magazines with your pistol, they have shared ergonomics and manual arms, as well as many parts with your main rifle. These parts are also prolific and everywhere, relatively affordable as well. They're very versatile and flexible. You can do a lot with a PCC and configure it how you need, even making it nearly identical to your main fighting rifle to really min-max the training value and the simplicity of moving from one system to another. The only real downsides to an AR-9 is that they're relatively unrefined. The AR-15 was never designed around 9mm, so a lot of creative engineering had to go into retrofitting the AR platform to work with 9mm and Glock magazines. Up until recently, this was done relatively poorly with great safety issues and reliability issues. Those have mostly been mitigated as of now. However, there's still a lot of companies and still a lot of places that are offering the old school parts for the AR-9, which are unreliable and unsafe, which makes it relatively difficult to buy a turnkey solution and adds a lot of bulk of obsolete internal parts. Really what it boils down to is this: if you are looking to pick up a PCC and it is not for a specific purpose, if you are choosing anything other than an AR-9 that utilizes Glock magazines, you are shoehorning yourself into a limited use case and subjecting yourself to unnecessary restrictions. If you're choosing a different platform for your PCC, you're going to be missing out on a shared manual of arms and parts with your main fighting rifle, the 5.56 AR, meaning now you have to be well versed on multiple weapon systems, adding to the complexity, the need for training, kind of defeating the purpose of having the AR-9 to get out there and shoot and have that value of going and shooting with 9mm translate to 5.56. There's also a good chance that you're going to have magazines that do not interface well with standard kit. Glock magazines tend to interface really well with standard pistol pouches, SMG pouches, or rifle mag pouches that you can retrofit or configure for the Glock magazines. Something like an MP5, an MPX, those magazines are more proprietary and are going to take a little more consideration to integrate into your kit or on your person. I'm not saying that other platforms don't have their use cases and their scenarios, but they're going to be very case by case and very specific, and the AR-9 is going to serve you very well for your broad spectrum, general purpose AR-9 PCC needs. If you've made it this far in the video and you haven't already started to convulse down in the comments talking about MPX this, MP5 this, roller delay, blowback, etc., you're probably considering picking up an AR-9, or you at least are thinking about it. And that leads us to our next topic, which is buy versus build. There's a handful of companies that are offering AR-9s from the factory ready to go. However, there's a multitude of issues that you can run into when purchasing them. Things like having a full-length 16-inch barrel so they can get away with selling it as a rifle. That's not really ideal in most scenarios. 16 inches is more than you need for the 9mm cartridge, and it's an excessive length. A lot of manufacturers will opt for non-Glock magazines. They'll go for Colt magazines, which are aesthetically pleasing, but inferior to Glock magazines in basically every single way. There's also been a lot of enhancements and developments for the AR-9 platform in the past 3 to 5 years that a lot of companies haven't caught up with, and are still using obsolete parts. We'll get more into what those look like later in the video, but things like incorrect buffer springs, obsolete buffer weights, obsolete bolt carrier groups, and the old school feed ramps are all common issues that you'll run into, which are where a lot of the notorious problems come from within the AR9 platform of feeding issues, reliability issues, or enhanced parts wear, as well as out of battery discharges. All of these issues have been addressed and mitigated, to my knowledge, with modern parts. Building your own AR9 is the best way to ensure you are getting all of those modern parts and not being stuck with one or two features that are obsolete or potentially hazardous. That, and thanks to the absolute wealth of knowledge, the AR9 wizard himself, Blowback9 on YouTube and via his website, he has done extensive research and comprehensive testing on a lot of these new developments for the AR9 platform. And without him, I honestly am not sure I would recommend someone build an AR9 unless they had experience building ARs and doing the proper research, as he has really broken down everything you need to know in a one-stop shop resource for building a reliable, safe, accurate, practical AR9. AR9s are also a really good way to start off learning how to build an AR. It's a lot less intimidating to get into an AR9 that does not have a gas system in it, unlike an AR-15 where the gas block, the gas tube are generally the hardest part and require the most tooling to install, opposed to the AR9, which is just straight blowback. You're essentially just assembling the lower, installing the barrel, and putting the... And with the existence of the absolute Giga Chad Big Brain Blowback 9, we can build an AR9 very reliably and very easily, and it's I would argue, a lot easier and less intimidating for somebody's first build, as they don't have to worry about a gas block. They can get repetitions and experience assembling and putting together a lower, as well as barreling an upper, and they don't have to worry about the gas system, which tends to be the hardest part of AR assembly and the one that requires the most tooling. We will return once more to the virtual blackboard of knowledge to briefly talk about the 3 different ways I see people put together AR9s. The first, and one of the more common ways I see people put together AR9s that is generally an unoptimized way, is building a pseudo PDW. It's fun and convenient to make a PCC or an AR9 very small and compact like a PDW, but the AR9 isn't really an amazing platform to turn into a PDW. It's relatively long, the receiver's pretty bulky and heavy compared to other PDW options. It generally just is an unrefined way to put together an AR9. Most of these builds also have pistol barrel length barrels, so you're purely gaining more controllability and no additional velocity with all this extra size and weight. Moving to the other very common type of build that I see is a full-length 16-inch rifle PCC. I think a lot of people build these because they don't have to deal with any of the pistol loss. They're also very quiet and usually gentle shooting. I generally still wouldn't recommend this, as 16 inches of barrel is far longer than you need for 9mm to get good optimal powder burn. And you're essentially putting together a rifle that is the same size and weight, maybe very slightly lighter than something like a 5.56 AR, but it's just as long and significantly less ballistically capable. The optimal choice is somewhere in the middle of those 2 options. Treating the AR9 sort of like a mini rifle or a small, compact, handy carbine is going to give you the best of both worlds and still provide great performance from the 9mm cartridge. You're going to have plenty of rail space to add whatever accessories you may want. It's going to maintain good ergonomics and still be significantly smaller and lighter than your full-size rifle. The only downsides to building out your AR9 like this is the fact that it is still technically a pistol, and it's not going to specifically do anything particularly well. It's going to be a jack of all trades, but in all honesty, that's what you want, is something that you can use flexibly and in many different scenarios. And it's going to be similar to your 5.56 rifle. So now that we are armed with knowledge and we have a vision for what our AR9 is going to look like, we can begin the part selection process and the build. And we will dive now into my current build and the build I've put together about 6 months ago based on all the information we've gone over so far and the decisions I made and why I chose certain parts and certain features for this build and what I would generally recommend you do to get a nice, practical, reliable PCC. Of course, starting off, we'll show and make clear. Of course, cool, yeah. We'll flag you guys too, why not? And we'll start as someone intended, tip to butt, starting with the barrel and the muzzle device. As for barrel length, I would generally recommend you go with 8 to about 12 inches in barrel length. The powder burn that you get usually for 9mm is generally most optimal and mostly burned between 8 and 12 inches of barrel length. Anything more than about 12, you're going to get diminishing returns and in some cases even a reduced muzzle velocity. And anything below 8, you're really just kind of putting a hat on a hat and building a really complicated, really heavy pistol at that point that's a little more controllable. If you want to build something like that, get a PDW or a chassis pistol. You're not really serving yourself very well going that short on an AR-9. You're missing kind of the point of the platform. So I went with an 11-inch barrel. It's a good happy medium, gives me plenty of space to mount accessories via a handguard that the barrel will, healthily clear, and gives me really good velocity out of 9mm and accuracy. The most important thing about the barrel, though, is going to be the feed ramps. So the feed ramps are where the magazine interfaces with the receiver and how the bolt pushes the rounds into the barrel. The old school legacy feed ramps were very narrow. They were very shallow and they were not very deep or large within the contour of the barrel. That's where you get a lot of the notorious reliability and feeding issues with the AR-9 platform. And I'll throw up some pictures because it'll be really hard to show on this particular build. But the old school legacy feed ramps were not ideal and barely fed round nose full metal jacket and were notorious for being unable to feed hollow points or even flat nose ammunition. I had an Angstat Arms PCC barrel that had those old school legacy barrel feed ramp profile, and I had attempted to run it with some hollow point ammo. And if you can see, hopefully it'll show up on camera. If not, I'll throw some pictures in at the end. It beat these 9mm rounds up heavily. This is it is very deeply recessed into the cartridge. You can see the brass is even bulged there in the middle, and the hollow point is greatly dented. I have another one here, very similar story. Very deformed hollow point. This would definitely not perform as well as it could coming out of the barrel. And this one's especially chewed up here, nearly completely closed and barely fed at all. This one really it did a number on this particular round here. And I have one more at the end that I dropped on the ground. It slipped out of my hands. But again, very dented, very beat up, not ideal. It will not feed hollow points or even round noses, or excuse me, flat noses very well. The enhanced feed ramp profile that is present on things like the EPC barrels from Aero Precision or Ballistic Advantage, those will feed everything that I have personally put through it so far. FMJs, flat nose, hollow points, it feeds reliably, and I have yet to have an issue with feeding with that feed ramp profile. So make sure that when you're selecting a barrel, you can see the back side of the barrel or the back end of the barrel where the rounds will feed in. And if it's a very shallow, narrow, minimal feed ramp, you want to stay away from those barrels. Those are the legacy feed ramps. They will not serve you well. As for muzzle device, really 9mm is not a very punchy cartridge. It is a little bit out of something like this, a PCC, where it is straight blowback. However, I don't recommend really going crazy with anything. The A2 birdcage is the GOAT of unsuppressed muzzle devices. It's what I would recommend. It reduces your flash, reduces muzzle rise marginally, and does not throw a bunch of gas everywhere and piss off everybody around you or concuss your homies in the stack. The A2 birdcage is also very light. It's unintrusive. I saw a lot of guys running one of these a KAK Industries flash can. This one is one of their slim lines. I originally had this set up to be used with this flash can and a handguard that went over the barrel. I saw a lot of guys doing this, thought, you know, oh, it looks kind of like a suppressor, that's really neat. And then I put it on and went, wow, this is the biggest piece of dog shit muzzle device I've ever used. It adds quite a bit of length, it adds quite a bit of weight. You're losing a lot of potential barrel and muzzle velocity running something like this, adding a ton of weight, adding a lot of extra bulk that you just don't need. And these really don't do anything. The whole point of a flash can is to push the muzzle blast forward away from you. And all that's going to do on a PCC is increase the flash downrange and give away your position. As well as 9mm is not very concussive out of a PCC. Even like a 4-inch barrel, I mean, it's going to be similar to a pistol. This is not necessary. I'm kind of surprised a lot of guys use these. I guess they do look kind of cool, and they do add a little bit of clearance if you go for something crazy short like a PDW, but something like the mini carbine or the mini rifle carbine style PCC, absolutely not necessary, would not recommend. Moving back to the handguard, it's really shooter's preference. If you want to be min-maxy about it, you can match your handguard to whatever is on your main fighting rifle. Sure, that's cool if you're able to do it. If not, go with something light, go with something that works for you. This is simply an M-LOK handguard that I had found at a gun show and had probably picked up for around less than $40. It had a lot of dust on it. It seemed like the guy kind of had it in a pile and forgotten about it. So do what makes sense for you. I would go with something light or with something that matches your main fighting rifle. It's up to you on what you prefer. M-LOK is obviously going to be lighter than quad rail. If you pick something that is not a timed handguard, like this one had to be timed, it is very secure with 6 bolts that are securing the handguard to the barrel nut. That's nice for mounting you know, night vision devices, IR lasers, or for this iron sight here to remain zeroed. However, you can get ones that are more modern for just a little bit more money that have retaining tabs here that are wedge lock or some sort of clamp that will be a lot easier to install. So unless you have a lot of experience or like to torture yourself with shims and timing, I would stay away from the timed handguards unless you specifically felt that you were experienced enough and want to deal with that drama, and you would like something to be zeroed here, maybe an IR device if you're running night vision or you're running iron sights like I am on this build currently. I went with just a basic mil-spec upper. I believe this is an Anderson, just basic mil-spec completed upper. Rest in peace, Anderson. Hopefully they rise from the ashes with Ruger. But this is just your basic mil-spec standard anodized upper receiver. You can go with PCC specific uppers. They'll save you a little bit of weight. How much money do you want to spend on it? Again, I wanted to keep this as affordable as functional and reliable, so I went with a simple mil-spec upper. It works for me. It's simple, and there's no extra money on features I don't care about, and I get to keep my dust cover. Some of the AR9 specific uppers will not have a dust cover, so I like that feature. Moving down to the bolt carrier group, you're going to want to make sure you get a bolt carrier group that is compatible with Glock magazines. Some are Colt magazine only, some are both. I really haven't noticed an issue or heard of any issues with people using ones that are cross-compatible between Colt and Glock magazines. Just make sure you get one that is compatible with Glock magazines, and ensure that you get one, ideally, make sure you get one that has this bottom feed lug on it. Hopefully this is showing up well on camera. I will pull up some more pictures of it. This is a bad enhanced 9mm bolt carrier group, and as you can see, it has that bottom feed lug. You are going to want that bottom feed lug because it will help mitigate and remove the possibilities of an out of battery discharge. Bolt carrier groups like the Aero Precision EPC9 bolt carrier group, as much as I like a lot of those features that Aero Precision has done with the EPC program, the EPC bolt carrier group does not have that bottom feed lug, and that can potentially cause issue with potential out of battery discharges, which is something you definitely don't want. So I would recommend spend the little extra money on your barrel, your bolt carrier group, and ensure that you are getting something that is going to be safe and reliable. As for the charging handle, just simple mil-spec charging handle here is what I chose, probably from Anderson. I don't need to get fancy with it. I like to reduce snag points. It's what I run on my main fighting rifle. Mil-spec is totally fine. It's cheap, and I had one lying around, so I threw it in here for this particular build. Another final note in regards to the bolt carrier group is if you can get one with a built-in extractor. Some of them do not have a built-in extractor, and they rely solely on the extractor built into the lower. It's relatively inconsistent, and getting one with a 1911 style extractor will also aid in reliability in extraction. Fortunately, the lower we chose does have the fin extractor built into it. This is a Spikes tactical lower, and on this particular lower itself, it's relatively unrefined. It is an old school style with a lot of the extra material up at the front near the mag well, but as you can see, it does have the fin ejector on it. For the lower, I'm not super picky. Do what makes sense for you. The fin extractor helps. Make sure that if you do get one with a fin extractor, that there may be some fitment required with your upper and the bolt carrier group. Little bit of troubleshooting may be required. Personally, the Spikes Tactical Lower and the bad enhanced bolt carrier group were compatible right out of the box. I didn't have to do any adjustments, which is awesome, and I've been getting very good, reliable feeding. Of course, some features you can look for is a slightly flared mag well. This one from Spikes is slightly flared. The EPC barrel, or the EPC lowers from Arrow, the enhanced pistol carbine ones, are really nice. They are a bit lighter. However, they are more expensive. So again, how much do you want to pay for? What do you value? This one so happened to be at a local FFL of mine for like $35 in absolute steal. All I had to do was throw in my mil-spec lowers parts kit. Goes into segue into lower parts kit. I went with mil-spec. If you have something specific that's ambidextrous on your main fighting rifle, mirror it on your lower to get used to those controls. For me, I don't have any of that. Don't need to introduce additional friction points, snag points, points of failure. So mil-spec parts was what I chose. A mil-spec trigger as well. Keeping it cheap, keeping it simple. It's a PCC. It's not an SMG for me. It's not a cheater, USPSA gun. I'm not shooting super far with it. I'm not making super precise shots. A mil-spec trigger is more than adequate for 9mm, out to 200 meters realistically and reliably. So there's your trigger. For pistol grip, I went with, one more thing with the lower. The Spikes does have the enhanced trigger guard as well. That's a nice feature and something you don't have to spend money on upgrading. It's also built into the lower, which adds some rigidity to it. For pistol grip, I had just used a leftover Ruger pistol grip that I had that came on the 5.56 when I first bought it and then configured it. The shooter's preference, whatever you want, man, for your pistol grip. Do what makes sense. Mirror the one on your rifle if you want, or pick what's cost effective, whatever works for you. I honestly don't really like the Ruger 5.56 pistol grip, but it was around, it was cheap, and again, I wanted this to be as cheap as functional. There's really nothing wrong with it. It's just pretty slim, very minimal texturing. It's pretty smooth, but it's worked for me on this build. It's totally fine, and I didn't really want to spend extra money on another Magpul grip. So here we go. We're reusing parts, saving us some money, instead of just having them rot in our drunk drawer. Moving back to what is going to be the last really important part we're going to talk about, that is going to be your buffer and your buffer assembly. So we are using a standard carbine buffer. I believe this is a 6-position standard carbine buffer. You don't need to do a pistol buffer or anything like that. Inside, we want to use a carbine spring and a dead blow reciprocating buffer that is 8 ounces or more. The reason being is the old school legacy thought process and design for the AR9 was before the heavier buffer weights existed. You really had about an H3, which I believe is around 5 ounces, or the H3 Plus that came in a lot of old school and still come in some modern AR9s. That's right around 5 to 5.6 ounces in weight. That is not enough weight to have a good, reliable, reciprocating buffer and bolt carrier group mass. you need about 8 ounces of weight or more in the buffer. Before the higher weight buffers existed, they mitigated that issue, or they supplemented it with a 308 AR-10 spring. The problem with running an AR-10 spring is that you are forcing your bolt carrier group back with so much force that you are inducing bolt bounce. And bolt bounce is was a very real issue that old AR-9s had, where the bolt would slam home with so much force that it would bounce back slightly, enough to have an out of battery discharge. That is obviously not cash money, and we don't want that to happen. So, thanks to Blowback 9 and some other companies and people who have done extensive research, they have found that I believe the ideal combined weight of your bolt carrier group and your buffer weight should be around 22 to 24 ounces. If I'm incorrect, I'll throw it up on screen what it should be, but that should be the combined weight. So having the old school 6-ounce buffer and a 308 spring is hazardous and unsafe. Do not build your AR-9s that way. You run the issue of increased parts wear and the possibility of a bolt bounce induced out of battery detonation when you pull the trigger at just the wrong time and cause that malfunction that could cause injury. And the carbine length, or the carbine spring, is going to be more than enough with the proper weighted bolt carrier group and buffer. Also ensuring that you get a reciprocating buffer, the one that has, when you shake it, the weights, they move within the buffer. That is important because that will also cut down on bolt bounce, where the entire weight of your bolt carrier group and buffer are not slamming into the front of the receiver at the same time. KAK Industries, they make some really good 9mm PCC bolts, or I'm sure they do make good bolts, but they make some really good AR-9 buffer weights, everything from around 7 ounces all the way up to 10 plus ounces. I've always been told go heavier than go lighter. I have the 8.4 ounce reciprocating buffer in mine. That seems to be one that works in most all platforms and tends to get good reliability and not have increased parts wear. If you end up running a lighter buffer in a carbine spring, that carbine spring will eventually break down, and you could have parts failures and increased wear on the firearm. So, in summary, carbine spring, carbine tube, and an 8-ounce or more reciprocating dead blow style buffer. There are some other options like the hydraulic buffers or the roller delayed buffers, which I've heard generally good things about, but I personally have not tested myself, and they tend to be $100 to $300, while a standard dead blow buffer is right around 40 bucks. It's something I may test in the future. You can tune the system to be gentler recoiling. However, it is something that I have not tested yet, so I'm not going to recommend people do, especially because of the cost associated with it. Finally, some last minute items. Your pistol brace of choice, up to you. This is a fin style, I believe BTR, BTR Magpul fin style brace. I like these because they're consistent and they don't flex at all, so I get a nice consistent bracing effect every time I use it. Something like a SB Tactical or ones that are rubber, they tend to flex more. They might be more comfortable. Really depends on what your preferences are. Just get one you can mount a sling to and that works for you. Finally, whatever accessories you choose to run on your PCC are really going to be up to you. For sighting systems, I would recommend either iron sights. These are a set of Magpul Embus Pros that I had lying around that were left over from a previous build, so I put them on this weapon system and they work pretty well. Iron sights are nice because they don't require batteries. They're not very prone to failure. If you are going to choose just iron sights and keep it light and simple, I would recommend fixed iron sights and not backups like this, but we're running what we have right now, or a red dot. Of course, red dots are going to be pretty much the ideal for quick close range shooting, and that is exactly what the PCC is built for. Putting magnification like a prism, a magnifier, or an LPVO is more magnification than you need on something like this, and is going to add unnecessary weight to what should be a simple, handy carbine. For those who watched the PCC video, you might recognize this monstrosity that I had put together for this build when I was doing the filming and testing for this PCC. This is a primary arms micro red dot that I had picked up from the same gun show that I picked up my handguard for about $100. These are, you know, legacy red dots. I don't think they make them anymore. They're not horrible inherently, but the carry handle pick rail stack sucks. You have been lied to, and these are not good. Yes, they are serviceable, but you're adding a ton of weight and a ton of height over bore. These are not the move, and I did this kind of for the memes and as a way to have a cheap red dot on this build, as this is an absolute height red dot and would be really low on this this setup, and I wouldn't be able to co-witness my irons through it. It sucks though. It's too much weight. Keep it simple. Keep it reliable. These iron sights work really well for me. The height over bore is cool if you're going to do night vision shooting. Hey, if that's what you're going to do, more power to you. But having that much height over bore really does make it so as you're transitioning target, there's a lot more wobble and inconsistency when you are doing non-night vision shooting. So whatever you do, I would say iron sights, red dot. I wouldn't put a prism or an LPVO or any magnification on this. It's overkill for how long range you're going to be shooting. Sling, whatever you personally like. This is a repurposed Smith & Wesson sling. Sling could be whatever you want. This is a repurposed Smith & Wesson sling that I had lying around that I have paracorded here to the handguard. It works for me. Quick adjust is nice. You can mirror what's on your duty rifle or your main fighting rifle. That's awesome. And of course, every rifle needs a white light. Positive target identification is important. This is the TLR RM1 that I have on here on my personal build. It works great as a weapon-mounted light. It is simple, no pressure pads. It's very similar to what is on my main fighting rifle. So your accessories are really up to you and how you want to run it. However, I hope that showing this build and how it has worked for me and the decisions I have made and the reasoning behind it helps guide you to build a usable, practical, reliable PCC for your needs. If you made it this far in the video, I really hope that you learned something or it was at least genuinely entertaining. I put a lot of effort and time into each one of these videos, and I purposely do videos on things that I'm passionate about and know about for YouTube. And if that is something you like, I encourage you to subscribe and join the community. We have a Discord if you want to get extra autistic and talk with other fellow PCC nerds and members of the firearms community. I'm in there pretty often answering questions, hanging out with the boys. And if you want to support the channel, we have a Patreon and Subscribe Star. Links are in the description. Absolutely unnecessary, but always greatly appreciated. It helps fund videos and builds like this. Finally, I'm curious to know your thoughts. Hop down in the comments, leave a like if you enjoyed the video, leave a dislike if you hated it, and go ahead and tell me what you thought of the PCC build overall, and go ahead and lambast me for saying that the AR9 is better for the average person over an MP5 or MPX superiority. Thanks for watching again, guys. Keep your heads held high. Bones out. Super based, we did it again. Making fantastic videos.